I think it's really important to walk that fine line between how can I strengthen my business from the inside out? How can I maintain my guest loyalty that I've had for so many years? And how can I get my team to understand why we're doing these changes so that they can get behind the reasons why we're doing this in the first place? I think that you can do a lot without having that outward impact on your guest experience. But listen, at the end of the day, everyone's trying to stay in business. And if there's things that aren't right, you have to have the courage and have the clarity to embrace those changes. I think the best thing a business can do is reinvent itself in the right way. And I help owners do that by minimizing any potential negative impact to the business as best we can.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Going Beyond the Deal podcast. Today's conversation is one I've been really looking forward to. My guest is Michael Balsamo, founder and CEO of the Sage Advisory Group. Now, if you work in the restaurant or hospitality industry, you may already know some of Michael's work. You may know him as the guy who comes in, builds the systems, fixes the chaos, and helps owners finally feel like they're in control of their business. But today, I want to go deeper than that because Michael's story is not just about consulting. It's about a life built inside the restaurant industry from the ground up. From a family Italian restaurant in Rockville Center, Long Island, where he grew up watching his parents build something that lasted more than 25 years, to the dish pit, to the dining room, to leading teams across some of the most respected restaurant groups in the country. Eventually stepping back and asking himself a different question. Not how do I run this restaurant, but how do I help everyone else run theirs better? That is what Sage is built on. 25 years of real operational experience, every segment, every role, every challenge turned into a system that gives independent restaurant owners what most of them have never had: clarity, visibility, and the confidence to actually lead their business instead of just surviving it. Michael has a line that I keep coming back to. The new currency of business is not money, it's trust. And when you understand how that works and how he works and how he gets inside the operations, builds the systems, trains the teams, and stays accountable until the numbers move, that line makes complete sense. A mutual friend of ours, the great Drew Thompson, made the introduction. And Drew, I want to say thank you for making the introduction to my new friend Michael here, because this is exactly the kind of conversation that this show was built for. Today, we're going to talk about what it was like to grow up in a family restaurant business and what that taught him about people and standards. We're going to talk about why so many restaurants fail and what owners are actually getting wrong. We're going to talk about what it took to go from operator to founder and what he had to unlearn to build something of his own. We're going to talk about leadership, trust, and what it really means to build a culture that lasts. And we're going to talk about what he sees next for Sage, for the industry, and for the owners he sees in the trenches every single day. If you own a restaurant, operate one, or know someone who does, this conversation's for you. And if you've ever thought about what it looks like to turn 25 years into that experience into a business that helps other people wins, this one is for you. Michael, thank you for being here, sir. What's going on, my friend?
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here, and thanks for the great introduction.
No problem. No problem. So tell me about this. I mean, you started off working at your family's Italian restaurant in Rockville Center. I've worked in a bunch of restaurants myself. I've been a chef. I've been a bar back. I've been a line cook. I've done a lot of those things. And I know with a lot of these businesses, it's a family affair. I mean, like, this is like what you talk about all the time. I don't think you talk about other things. Tell me about what that was like to grow up in the restaurant business.
Yeah, listen, the restaurant business was not something that was generational in my family. My grandparents and my great-grandparents had businesses of their own, whether it be in a dry goods store or my grandmother was a seamstress for a large company. But my dad was kind of the first entrepreneur in the family. He had a bagel store for a number of years where he sold retail and wholesale. And then in 1977, he and my uncles got together and bought into a franchise called Lenny's Clam Bar.
Okay.
It was originally from Queens, New York, and they found a great spot in Rockville Center to be the flagship of their new restaurant life. Restaurant was opened in 1977 when I was about 8 years old. And from 8 years old until I was, 33 years old, I only knew of my dad being in the restaurant, behind the line, cooking food, endless stories of staff and customers. And I had the pleasure of 10 years of that 25 years where I spent with him working 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week.
Wow. So take me through that. I mean, obviously, at 8 years old, you're, emptying waste baskets, that kind of stuff. And then, as you get older, I'm sure summer job, you're always working. But like, where did you go to college?
I went to Fordham University in the Bronx.
Okay. So
Yeah.
then after Fordham, you went right back to the restaurant. How did that work out?
While I was waiting tables as a server through high school and most of college summers. And when I graduated college, I went back to get my MBA. And even during taking classes, I was still waiting tables and helping him out with the restaurant business. It wasn't until I turned 23 and I was post grad school that it was sort of an inflection point in my life and his. He realized after 15 years, it was time to renovate. It was time to bring the restaurant to a more modern look and menu and so on. And I put my dreams of being the next Gordon Gekko down on Wall Street on hold, and I committed my time to helping him get that renovation off the ground and bring a new restaurant to life. So for him, it was a step into a new concept, sort of, and I helped him get there. And yeah, by the time I was 23, I was full time going through the construction process, through the opening, and into everything else it took to get reopened under the new concept.
So now, how long did you stay there from 23? Well, when you were 23 years old, how long did you stay there? And I mean, what was a kind of, when was the end of that restaurant, or when did you decide to move on?
I moved on quite honestly when it was sold. So the minute I started from 23 until I was in my, I was 32, 33 years old, 10 years later, my dad was, time to move on into better things, retired after 25 grueling years. And I came into the city and started my restaurant career, working for restaurant groups then. But if he didn't sell it, who knows, might still be there.
Was there any ever thought of you taking over the business from him?
There was thought about it, but to be quite honest, I instinctively knew that I didn't know what I needed to do and needed to know in order to do that. Meaning there was new competition in the area. My dad at that point had seen so much change in the town where the restaurant was, so much change in his business, so much change in the industry. And so he kind of said, you know what, it's time for me to move on. Let me go into sort of my 60s as doing something different. And for me, it just wasn't the right time. I needed to go and explore restaurant life in a different way.
Very cool. So when you left the family business and you went into the city, what were you doing at these restaurants? I mean, you're sitting here with pretty major education, great university, you get your MBA, and then you decide, okay, I'm not going to be Gordon Gekko. I want to stay in this restaurant thing. How did that work? What were you doing at that point?
After 10 years of being in the dining room, being in the kitchen, on the line, similar to you, I learned every position from busser to dishwasher to line cook to maitre d' and manager and so on. So I was looking for some management job to keep me in the dining room where I had come to love all the insanity and craziness of a busy dining room energy. And I landed my first job working for a restaurant group called Be Our Guest. And Be Our Guest at that time was, in my opinion, the hospitality leader in the industry in New York. And with all I learned with my dad over 10 years, working in that restaurant group gave me the foundation of what restaurant life and hospitality was all about.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. So we talked about this when we spoke a month or so ago. I was joking around with you where there's this one restaurant, that where I grew up, where it was just like every couple years it was a new restaurant. I always say to like myself in my head, I'm like, who's the idiot that thinks they're gonna be like the special person that's going to have this concept that's just going to like just change the game. You know, I see situations like that time and time again. And then, here in Monmouth County, there's some, restaurateurs that are just knocking the cover off the ball and are opening up new locations and new things, going out of state and being very successful. You know, why do so many restaurants fail? And I don't know if do you know the stats? I mean, like for a brand new de novo restaurant, like what are the chances that that will be successful?
I mean, over the years, the industry has always said that 5 out of every 10 restaurants close. Last year across America, almost 10,000 restaurants closed, didn't relocate. They just closed up shop, never came back. And I feel that looking at the restaurant industry is how I've been in my experience. There's 3 components to running a restaurant. There's what's coming into your restaurant, meaning vendors, product. How are you managing your vendors? Is that process working? What's going on within the 4 walls on a daily basis with you and your team and your customers? And then, what's happening on the exterior side of it, which means when your guests leave, what gives them a reason to come back, right?
Gotcha.
And I feel sometimes that for any number of reasons, there's not just one way to run a restaurant, but I do believe you have to develop your way of running it that still captures the way to manage all 3 of those components effectively.
Gotcha.
So if you're managing your vendors and everything that's being delivered into your restaurant, there's a process to do that. There's a process and a way that ensures that you're starting your business off on the right foot every day. What happens within the 4 walls is what's happening in your kitchen, what's happening behind the bar. Does your team have the right process by which the kitchen functions, the front of house functions, your managers function? And then again, what's that experience for the guest? Because a guest experience, quite honestly, it doesn't just happen on its own. When you go into a dining room and you sit and have lunch or dinner or brunch, that really should have some sort of framework and process around it so that you leave feeling that you had a great time and you're going to come back. So as we'll talk more about Sage, that's why I created Sage, is what are the processes that's helping you run your business effectively?
Yeah. Do you think a lot of people, because listen, I'm a managing director at an investment bank, but as many people know about me, I've had many different career paths that I've taken, but I got accepted to culinary school and, Johnson and Wales. And the only reason I didn't go was because, probably with maybe something that you enjoy because you've been in this industry, I didn't want to work nights and weekends and every holiday, right? Which is something that you probably come accustomed to. So I decided not to do it. But I feel like a lot of people might get into the restaurant business because they think like, wow, I really love to cook. I really can make great product, but they don't have that business mindset. And to be quite candid, I mean, I've spoken to, people that I've known that have gotten into themselves into some pretty significant financial trouble because they had this dream to just cook really, really good food, which they do, but they don't know how to manage, how do you get your pricing together? How do you do this? How much should you serve? Because there's a whole science behind this, and that's what Sage is doing. So, I mean, I can see why so many different restaurants fail. But I mean, what do you think the biggest challenges are, in today in the industry that people are facing?
I think today, ever since COVID, the industry has taken probably the biggest hit ever in finding good talent. I think that during COVID, people found other jobs because the industry took such a hit where so many restaurants closed and some never even came back. They were forced to go into other lines of business, other ways of earning a living. So finding good talent is probably the biggest challenge right now, because without the right team, without the right leaders, you're just starting out at a disadvantage. I think that having expenses, rent, labor costs, all those expenses are much different now than they were 5, 10, 15 years ago. So margins, as we know, are really, really thin. And I think all in all, the industry's changed so much where you've got delivery platforms, you have everything being done on a phone. on a delivery app, you're making reservations through apps. So, from a cost perspective, labor, fixed costs, good talent for sure. But I feel that even within that, if you have the right framework, if you're set up for success from the beginning, if you're not being so heavily focused on the creative side, but you have someone that could show you and teach you how to be properly funded before you open, that makes a big difference. I'll give you an example. In New York City, new restaurants sometimes wait 5, 6, 8, 10 months just for Con Ed to turn on the gas. So
Wow.
if you don't have that sort of insight, you could easily burn through your pre-opening capital really, really fast.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden you're not even open and your P&L is upside down. It's those kind of things that can really make or break, especially the first restaurant owner. It could
Yeah.
really start you out into a bad situation.
Let's jump into Sage a little bit. I mean, when do you typically, it sounds like the answer, I'm already going to answer my own question here is, the best time to tap Sage in would be before you even get started, but when do you typically get tapped in? When is a good time that somebody should call you? Or, is it somebody that's like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Could you help me with it?
Sure. It's a great question. I'm working with 3 clients right now that are all very different in why they reached out to me. One happens to be a third generation owner. He's the grandson of the grandfather that opened the place over 35 years ago. He raised his hand and said, I'm not a restaurant guy. I don't want to see my grandfather's legacy fail. Can you come help me out? I'm in over my head. Another client reached out. They admittedly said, we know that there's things we don't know. It's just we don't know what we don't know. Right. And so they were smart enough to raise their hand and ask for help. And the third owner is extremely successful. He's been in business for 10 years, but he wants to scale his business, but he doesn't have the systems in place to do so. Right. So generally speaking, I would prefer, I'm not a miracle worker. So before they open is ideal. Within the first 2 to 4 years is probably also a good time window to reach out. And if you just have a sense that your business isn't performing the way that it should, whether your accountant is telling you or your attorney's telling you or your bank account is telling you, if things just don't seem quite right, but you don't know why, that's a great time to reach out so we could help you find that visibility and that clarity.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be just in my mind, at least, I'm not trying to tell you how to run the Sage advisory group here, right? But if you could come in, I mean, it's like the same thing that I do as an investment banker. If someone's even thinking about doing something, say, just get a second set of eyes on it, right?
Yep.
It's probably good to just have you come in. And I mean, listen, it's like going to the doctor. If he says, hey, you're completely healthy and you walk away, you're probably excited to be able to tell people that as well. And then if
Sure.
not, give them some stuff here. So, you know, the 4 pillars that I know with you guys, you have financial management, operations and field advisory, restaurant project management, and one-on-one coaching for owners and operators. When you first come into a business, walk me through, I have a business, I've been open 2 years. I'm doing pretty well, getting, decent reviews. Everything is just kind of status quo, but nothing's really taken off. You come into my business, how long is your tenure there? How long does it take you to start like looking like what's a checkup, look like? And what are you looking at first with the business?
Sure. Great question. So initially, the project scope for each client is different. Generally, it could be anywhere from 4 to 6 months, depending on the urgency from my client. And I always start with a real in-depth, sometimes 2-hour conversation with the owner, where I just get everything I possibly need to know about what's happening. Where were you 3 or 5 years ago? Tell me your pain points. Tell me what's going on with your ability to have a life outside of here. I've looked at your reviews. I've done my own due diligence, but let's really get down to what's really happening. Are you just not seeing proper cash flow? Are your reviews not great? Is your bank account going down every month? So my main focus initially is to really have an open discovery conversation. And then I spend about a week or 2 in their business, meaning I'm looking at all of their documents, their tools. What are you using to track your business? Show me your 2 or 3 months P&L. Let me get on a phone with your bookkeeper or your accountant. So I do a lot of due diligence up front because quite honestly, the owners know what they think is going on in their business, but I've got to get under the hood and really take a deep dive into it. And then we sort of prioritize. meaning if there's a lack of financial reporting, that's got to be something that's handled really, really quickly, because if there's no reporting in P&L, we're flying blind and I can't tell you how your business is doing or not.
Mhm.
And then I look on the operational side. What tools are you using? What processes and procedures and structure do you have to run your business? One client I had, I got into their share drive and there wasn't one standard operating procedure written down anywhere. Doesn't make it wrong. Doesn't make it wrong. That I feel can only last so long before. See, look, I believe that you need to connect the dots. And if you're
Yes.
not connecting the dots via a process for receiving your product, staffing your team, putting out your menu, prepping in the kitchen. I mean, you're a trained chef, right? Or a culinary almost graduate, right? If you're not portioning and prepping properly, that's money that's literally going in the trash, or you're not getting the money you should. There's a whole science behind menu engineering. So I can go on and on. There's all these different facets of things that I go down a checklist to really optimize. How do we prioritize what you need? What's going to have the biggest impact on your business first? How's your business performing now? And what does success look like for you as my client? Do you want to
Yeah.
make 10 times what you're making? Or do you just want to break even? Are you looking to expand? So all those things really dictate how the project and how the work with them goes.
And how is it? Because I can speak from my own experience in working with business owners, where we come in and we might say, "Hey, this is a little bit broken here. You might want to take a look at this." And some people, everybody has the most beautiful baby in the world. You don't want to insult their baby. Are owners challenged by that? Being
They are.
challenged like that?
Yeah, they are. It's not easy to always have them see the value of just speaking with someone like me, right?
Yeah, yeah,
There's that fine line between not thinking you need help and realizing that a conversation just might open some doors. You might not want to work with me, but
yeah,
let's have a conversation to do a pulse check on your business, because maybe the decisions you're making make sense, but I want advisors like myself, and there's a lot of us out there,
hmm,
but being an advisor to a business should be no different than a financial advisor. Let's just meet for 30, 45 minutes, have a conversation. I think every restaurant owner should meet and have a restaurant advisor that they could call and just say, hey, you have 30 minutes to talk. Here's what's going on in my business.
got it, got it.
Yeah.
The one thing that I think is really interesting, because I remember when I worked at a restaurant and suddenly we said, okay, things need to change. We don't necessarily love our clientele. We want to get a new clientele in. And literally the owner flipped everything on its head and started doing all of, the right things, right? So all of a sudden the portions were done appropriately, right? Which was then different from what the normal person that came to the restaurant. Oh, and now we're selling fancier steak. Like what the prices all went up and things changed.
Mm.
And that so the consumer was like, what's going on here? And the staff was like, oh, well, now we're some fancy like now I actually have to wear a black shirt and this, and like I don't wear just a bar t-shirt anymore, or whatever I want to wear. Like, and it was such a culture shock to like everyone. How do you manage that whole entire process? I mean, is it like a slow change, or how do you do that? Because some of these things, it's bleeding cash. I mean, when I talked to you about this restaurant, it was insane. I mean, like free drinks all the time, and it was a mess. It was a
Yeah.
complete mess. How do you like make it not be so chaotic for change?
Sure. That's a great question. You definitely need to be careful. I'm not in the business of suggesting that any restaurant owner should do something that dramatic, but I do believe that it should be done from the inside out. Meaning the owner's got to have visibility into their business. They need to look and see what processes are there or not. And when it comes to making changes, I think you need to be strategic. I think you need to be really mindful of the impact it's going to have on your guest experience. And I also think that if you're going to make a complete concept change, a 180-degree turn, maybe the original concept itself wasn't the right one you should have started with.
Yeah.
So, I think it's really important to walk that fine line between how can I strengthen my business from the inside out? How can I maintain my guest loyalty that I've had for so many years? And how can I get my team to understand why we're doing these changes so that they can get behind the reasons why we're doing this in the first place. I think that you can do a lot without having that outward impact on your guest experience. But listen, at the end of the day, everyone's trying to stay in business. And if there's things that aren't right, you have to have the courage and have the clarity
Mhm.
to embrace those changes. I think the best thing a business can do is reinvent itself in the right way. And I help owners do that by minimizing any potential negative impact to the business as best we can.
Got it. Got it.
Yep.
So I love this line. I really could not agree with it more. I'm actually talking a lot about this when I'm out there speaking and writing and stuff. The line is, the new currency of business is not money, it's trust. I can't agree more with that. What does that look like in practice inside of a restaurant?
Well, anyone that's going to come in and look at your business and offer advice, suggestions, insights, there's got to be a level of trust established literally right from the get-go. Me personally, I'm an open book. I've made a lot of good decisions in my career, and I've also made my share of mistakes. And I've had opportunities where on a Friday or Saturday night, as a general manager in a busy steakhouse, man, I made the wrong call about something and it blew up in my face. So I look to establish trust with my clients from the get-go, tell them my background, share where I've learned and had the opportunity to work with some great people along the way to get to where I am today. But having the ability to establish that trust makes all the difference in the world. If I'm going to come in and stand in your kitchen and in your dining room, and your guests are going to be looking at who's the new guy walking around the dining room, your staff's going to ask questions. We have to have a real connection in order to do that. And I like to make sure that that's established right from the get-go. It's really
Got it.
important. Yeah.
And that's tough in today's world. I mean, the biggest challenge that we hear pretty much throughout all industries right now is the talent pool. And, how are you building and retaining, strong, internal teams in today's labor market? I mean, I'm sure that comes down to, trust, trust in me that if we fix this, there will be more for all of us. How do you do that in practice?
Yeah. It always starts with what I call hiring hard. Meaning, if you have a certain standard of the talent, the experience, and the people that you want working for you, it starts right at that first interview so that you know what your expectations are about the people you're about to hire. Oftentimes, once people get hired, depending on the restaurant, it's not everywhere, owners sometimes and managers get so focused on being in the business that they forget about training, they forget about communication, they forget about what really is important for those people that you have working for you. How can I develop you from a dishwasher to a line cook to a sous chef, right? There's got to be something in running your business that doesn't just attract talent for just getting the work done. There's got to be a culture within the restaurant that gives people an opportunity to give feedback to ownership where it's heard and listened to. I think building a positive work culture is always a great way to retain talent. Being open to know that sometimes owners make mistakes and they get to own them sometimes and not pretend like they didn't just, make a bad decision. I think it just comes with transparency. I think it comes with communication. And I think if you're really intentional about who and how you hire with the culture to back it up, you pretty much increase your chances of building a good team around you. I'm actually in the middle of writing a book myself, to be honest. And the
Love it.
focus of it, the title of it is, it focuses around running your restaurant with intention
Okay.
and just not by doing it by either luck or passion or dreaming or creativity. But yeah, I think it's all about your intention behind your team's experience when they're working for you.
Very cool. Well, we'll have to have you back on when the book is out and ready to go. So
Definitely.
if you don't mind, I'm going to do a couple of rapid fire questions. And you gave me my first one because it's juicy. Now you have to give me the good answer here. What is the biggest mistake that you ever made on a Friday night at a busy steakhouse?
It wasn't at a busy steakhouse. It was when I was at my dad's restaurant. I was, this hotshot 25-year-old thinking I knew everything. And it was 4th of July. And my dad was open pretty much every day except Thanksgiving and Christmas Day.
Okay.
So it's 4th of July. It's a gorgeous sunny day. Everyone's at the beach. No one's around. No one's coming through the door. And the staff is just complaining up, down, left, and right how miserable they are. And at 25, I started to care what people were saying. I tried to manage them and I tried to be the voice of reason. And everyone was just miserable. So I went to my dad and I said, look, just send everybody home. It's dead. I'm tired of hearing it. Let's just send everybody home, wish them well. They go to a barbecue. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. The minute the sun went down, we got slammed. He literally sent every other server home. I had one busser, one runner, and myself. And we got filled. We almost got filled up that night. 140, 160 seats. I got my butt handed to me. And never again will I feel like I get to make a decision out of impulse and not thinking like, well, maybe we should just see what happens from here on in.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. And in your New York City tenure, I mean, I don't know if who's the coolest person that you've served or you've worked with?
Interesting. I can tell you this. I've been blessed to meet so many incredible people, customers, managers, teammates. Like I'm truly blessed in that way. If I had to call out one celebrity, I would say it's a toss up.
Okay.
Tom Brady and Howard Stern.
Okay. So you have to get into it.
Yep. Howard Stern and his wife would come into Southampton, Long Island, when I was doing a summer pop-up for the BLT State Group. And they would come in almost every Sunday. They would sit in their favorite corner table. They would keep to themselves, mind their own business, enjoy the conversation, the meal. Extremely gracious, extremely generous, very appreciative of my team, always in a great mood. It made a very long summer very tolerable when some people would just come in and say thank you and just enjoy it and give great feedback. So that was really, really cool. And Tom Brady would come in and have dinner with us. And again, just extremely just gracious and patient and really nice to kind of engage with. There's tons of others that I could go on and on about.
Yeah. I won't ask you the bad ones. We don't want to call anybody out here.
Yeah.
So Michael, after 25 plus years in what we know to be a very grueling business, how are you personally staying so grounded? Is there any, tips, tricks that you deal, any regular habits? People love like anybody in a high demand career has their little things. What is it that Michael Balsamo does?
Many years ago, I had a manager that asked me, he says, how could you possibly stay calm all the time? And I said, look, everything has a solution in some way, shape, or form. I can't possibly get stressed about every little thing and still remain focused and make the right decisions, stay clear-headed. And over the years, for me to stay grounded, I lean a lot into gratitude. I lean a lot into being present with what's happening in front of me and not create extended stories of things that haven't happened yet, because I've been down that road and it's a dead-end street. So gratitude for me, appreciation for what I have, it really goes a long way to know that I'm thankfully and gratefully in the position that I am. I don't know if I'd be here if my dad didn't open the restaurant. On a personal note, 3 months ago, my dad peacefully passed on. And so the last 3 months has been incredibly filled with memories and stories that make me so proud to be doing what I'm doing today. And if not for his restaurant, I don't know if you and I'd be sitting here talking. If we were, maybe not about the restaurant business.
I have to ask this, my dad passed as well. Did he get to see you thrive in what you were doing with Sage? And like, how did he, what did he think about that? Like, I mean, because basically he gave you what is now your career. That must be pretty cool. I mean, what did he say about it?
He was beyond excited when I explained to him what I was doing, why I wanted to do it, how I was going about doing it. He couldn't have been more happy or more proud. To see me in my element, I get to be connected to the industry that I love, in restaurants, in kitchens, in dining rooms, still at my core. If you put me in a dining room tomorrow night, I'm the happiest guy around. So he was thrilled. And I know he still is today. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I like to ask all my guests this question, my $1 million question. When you look back on your journey, whether it be personally or professionally, what's one thing that's felt really small at the time, but ended up changing everything for you?
That's a great question. Catch me on my heels.
I can't give it to you in advance, you know?
I know. I think I think certain times showing up when I didn't really understand where it was going to take me. In other words, this business is grueling. The hours, the holidays, the nights, the weekends. And when I signed up to be the closing manager at a $20 million restaurant in Times Square back in 2002, I had no idea where it was going to go. I had never worked in the city. I spent some time in the city, but I was like a Queens, Long Island guy. I didn't really spend a lot of time in Manhattan. So this is all very, very new for me. And I just saw it as an opportunity to say, hey, let's see where it leads. Let's see where it goes. And so it wasn't about the position. It wasn't that I was some hotshot general manager going into the best place in Manhattan. I was working in a really big, very busy, extremely grueling, 12, 14-hour a day as a closing manager, getting home at, 3 in the morning, 5 nights a week. And I feel leaning into, let's see where this is going to go. Back then, I had no expectations, and it's led me to where I am today.
Very cool. Very cool. So now, where can listeners connect with you? Obviously, we'll put everything, all your contact info in the show notes, but just for people listening now, I know you put out a lot of content on LinkedIn. Hopefully after today, we'll get you some new content to put out on LinkedIn, but where's the best place for people to find you and reach you if they're in need of your service?
So 2 great places are definitely on LinkedIn. A lot of connection and communication on that platform on a daily basis with my peers, colleagues, and clients. And then you can also find me at my website, which is thesageadvisorygroup.com. There's a ton of content about what we do, how we work with our clients. There's an intake form if you're just curious and want to grab 30 minutes of my time to explore things further. But those are the 2 best places to find me. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, listen, Michael, really appreciate you you coming onto the show today. And I want to thank everyone for going beyond the deal with me today with my new friend, Mr. Michael Balsamo. And if you're a business owner or operator thinking about how these kinds of decisions impact your business, whether it's growth, capital, or long-term strategy, that's exactly the type of conversations that I have every day. So if you want a second perspective or someone just to think through it with, please feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to have a conversation. And if you found this conversation valuable, please subscribe to the podcast and share it with someone in your network who you think would benefit from it. Thank you again, Michael, and let's continue to build something meaningful together.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.